Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of VSTAR Radio. So today, it's time to have a little bit of a look at the buy list for Astral Radiance. These are the cards you need to have in your binder. Now, the way I do this, as I tell you every time, is I'm trying to make sure you've got all the cards you need to make any deck that you might like. I am not going to be suggesting you go and buy Pokemon as attackers, mostly because I don't know what kind of deck you want to play. Me personally, I want to test Beedrill V a lot. But I can't tell you to go and buy them, because maybe you don't want to. Similarly, Palkia VSTAR at this stage, looking at the results coming out of Japan, it's basically guaranteed to be a really good deck. So you may well want to go and buy a playset of Palkia VSTAR. But I'm not going to, because I know that I'm just not going to take Palkia to a tournament. I'm going to test it online, I'm going to build it online. I'm not taking Palkia to a tournament, so I might get one copy of my binder and that's it. It's up to you. I'm trying to make sure you got everything you need, so when you decide on a deck, you go and buy your attackers, and you are good to go. So starting off then, I think you need 1 to 2 copies of Kricketune. This is the new card whereby your grass Pokemon get an extra 40 HP, and put bluntly, if you're going to be playing a grass deck in the next few years, you should be considering playing Kricketune. It doesn't stack, you can only play one, but regardless, it's an extra 40 HP, that could be significant. I think you need 1 to 2 copies of Shaman, because for a single colourless energy, if you go second on your first turn, you can search for any free cards. That could absolutely work in some decks as a nice setup card. I do think you need 1 to 2 copies of Hisuian LILLIGANT VSTAR. Feel free to ignore me on this one. And the reason is, the ability Star Perfume says you can search for 5 in any combination of grass Pokemon and grass energy. Well, in any grass deck, this is a phenomenal VSTAR power, so I do think you need 1 or 2 of them hanging around, because if you ever play a grass deck, you should be considering that. Now, Radiant HEATRAN, obviously you only need 1 copy of this, because you can only play 1 copy of any Radiant Pokemon in your deck, but for free energy it does 70 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. Put quite simply, this is a very good card in a fire deck, and you need to have one just in case you want to play it. I also think you need 1 to 2 copies of Starmie V. It might be a water Pokemon, but for 2 water energy, you deal 50 damage for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. And we're already seeing this over in Japan. If you're playing a water deck, you're probably going to want to put 1 of these in there. The reason I say 1 or 2, you'll probably only ever want to play 1, but you may wish to put 2 in your deck because 1 could be prized. Therefore, 1 to 2. There we go. I think you need 2 to 4 copies of Hisuian BASCULIN, and I know this is not a particularly exciting card, but for 0 energy, search your deck for any 2 basic Pokemon and put them on your bench. If you're looking for a generic setup card, this is actually a really good one to get the Pokemon you need in the early game. Don't sleep on this one. It's not an exciting Pokemon, but it is nice for setting up. Now, I do think you need a copy of Radiant Greninja, because this is far and away the best of the Radiant Pokemon. Sure, the attack that does 90 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon is good in water decks, but really here it's the ability concealed cards. Discard an energy card from your hand, draw 2 cards. It's decent basic Pokemon draw, which we do not see very much of at all. Make no mistake about it, this is a very good card that is going to see a bunch of play, and everybody's going to need a copy of Radiant Greninja. It's great. Hey, speaking of which, everybody's going to need a copy of Radiant HAWLUCHA. No, it's not as good as Radiant Greninja, and I'm not pretending it is, but it's still got an ability that means you do 30 more damage to your opponent's Pokemon VMAX, and if you've been watching this channel much over the past few months, I've been mentioning Radiant HAWLUCHA a lot, because you know what? Sometimes that 30 damage is very significant. And as much as I dislike the Pokemon, I do think you need a couple copies of Hisuian SNEASLER, because as long as it's on your bench, your active Pokemon's retreat cost is reduced by 2. Stage 1 Pokemon lowers your retreat cost, could absolutely see play in a bunch of decks, so you're going to need it. One which I think is going to be a lot more impactful, at least in the short term, is Mightyena. If your opponent has any Pokemon VMAX in play, your attack essentially becomes free, and then you do 160 damage. It is a phenomenal counter to Mew VMAX, but it's also just a really good low-cost attacker against like any VMAX deck, this is one you are absolutely going to want. So do keep that one in mind. Darkrai V-Star is a weird one. I'm putting it on my list, and the reason is the ability Star Abyss, put 2 item cards from your discard pile into your hand. You know what? I've had like a billion games that I could have won with this V-Star power, so even if you're not playing a Darkness deck, even if you're not playing a Darkrai deck, I do think you could absolutely just put this into almost any deck as a nice tech for the V-Star power, and that's why I'm popping it on my list. Feeble also makes its way onto the list. I think you need 1 or 2 of these, because the ability says that if your opponent has 2 or fewer prize cards remaining, prevent all effects and supporter cards done to your bench Pokemon V. It's near the end of the game, your opponent just needs to KO a Pokemon V to win, and you stop them gusting it up with a supporter card, which is by far the most often way they're going to try doing it. Yes! Now, Magnezone's a weird one. I'm putting it on the list because I think if you're playing a metal deck in the near future, you're going to want it. Once during your turn, that's every turn, look at the top 6 cards of your deck and attach as much metal energy as you find there as you like. And it's awkward because it's a stage 2, but that is ridiculous energy acceleration. There are some good metal decks that can be made here. I also think you need 1 or 2 copies of Bronzong because it's immune to fire Pokemon. We saw the old version of this card winning Players Cup 1. If you're stuck against fire decks, this could be really good. Now, Regitrago's an odd one, but I do think you need a couple copies in your binder, and I'm certainly going to have a couple in my binder. Because the ability Dragon's Horde says that if it's in the active, you can draw until you've got 4 cards in hand. It's draw power on a basic Pokemon that doesn't end your turn. It's really good. The retreat cost of 3 lets it down, but make no mistake about it, this is very cool. Now, Eevee, I do think you need a playset of, because it's the best Eevee we've got. When you play a Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Eevees, you can search for a card that evolves from this Pokemon and put it onto it. But remember, if you've got 4 Eevee out, all you need to do is evolve one of them normally, and then Resonant Evolution will activate on all of the other 3. That is incredibly significant. I then think you need 1 or 2 copies of Hoot Hoot. Basic energy attached to your bench Pokemon can't be discarded by effects of your opponent's items or supporter cards. There are other things, but it's basically just a crushing hammer counter, and it's a really good one. Miltank, I think you need a couple copies of because you prevent all damage done by Pokemon V, and it's a basic Pokemon. You know there are some fun decks that can be made with this. And then finishing off with a couple of Pokemon V, we've got Oranguru V. If it's in the active, search for 2 tools. No, I don't think this is going to see a huge amount of play, but I absolutely do think that there's going to be some decks that really rely on tools that are going to want to play this. And similarly, Weirdeer V, when it moves from the bench to the active, you can move any amount of energy over to it, and then you do 40 damage for each energy attached to it. So you move it to the active, pile energy on, and smash. It's one of those. They are good. Now, when it comes to trainer cards, I tell you this every time, my theory is always playset of everything. Just get a playset of everything, because you never know what's going to end up being good. So I am going to say to get a playset of all of these, however, there are some that are a bit less good. We'll note them as we go through. ADAMAN lets you search your deck for any 2 cards, as long as you've discarded 2 metal energy. It's really good in metal decks. Cancelling Cologne turns off your opponent's active Pokemon's abilities, even if they don't have a rule box, which could be huge in some matchups. Choi, both players reveal their hands, you draw 3 cards. This is one that you could skip, but I do like the idea of knowing what's in your opponent's hand, combined with just that little, admittedly underwhelming draw. CYLLENE, you flip 2 coin to put any number of cards up to the number of heads from your discard pile on top of your deck. It can recover anything. It's already seeing play in Japan. It's good. Dark Patch is just ridiculous. Attaches a basic darkness from your discard pile to one of your bench darkness Pokemon. We saw how good it was last time. It's just as good now. Brief caveat that if, like me, you've been playing for long enough, you will have a playset of these lying around from Dark Explorers, because I know I certainly do. Energy Lotto, again, you might have this card. This came around in Guardians Rising, I want to say. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck, put an energy you find into your hand. No, it's not good energy search, and I'm not pretending it is. But it is a decent way to find special energy, which is generally very hard to search out, and that alone is worth it. Featherball lets you search for a Pokemon with no retreat cost and put it into your hand. You know what? Yeah, that's really good because, well, if you're ever playing free retreat Pokemon. If you're not, it's rubbish, but you might be. Gapejaw Bog, whenever either player puts a basic Pokemon from the hand onto their bench, they take 2 damage counters. Good for dealing extra damage to your opponent, and good because there are a bunch of attacks that will need this to activate the extra damage. Gardenia's Vigor draws 2 cards, and if you drew any cards, you can attach up to 2 grass energy from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon. Does not have to be a grass Pokemon. If you're playing a grass deck, you're going to be playing this. Simple as that. Grant says that your fighting Pokemon do an extra 30 damage this turn, which is good. But if it's in your discard pile, you can discard 2 non-Grant cards from your hand and put it back into your hand. There are a bunch of decks out there and coming in the future that will want you to discard your hand or lots of cards from it. Or you might want to empty out your hand to draw more cards. Either way, Grant is nuts and you definitely need this. Gutsy Pickaxe. Look at the top card of your deck. If it's a fighting energy, attach it to a bench Pokemon, otherwise put it into your hand. Good for fighting energy acceleration, and good for just drawing cards in a speed deck. Hisuian Heavy Ball, you look at the face down prize cards, find a basic Pokemon, and swap it with Hisuian Heavy Ball. You do then shuffle your prize cards, which sucks because you lose that information, but if you've got basic Pokemon you want out of your prizes, this is really good. Arena searches out a water Pokemon and an item card. Really good in water decks, already seeing play. Jubilee Village allows either player to shuffle their hand into the deck and draw 5 cards as long as they're willing to end their turn. If you've got nothing going on, it's totally worth it. Kamado lets you choose a card in your hand to save, discard all the others, and draw 4 cards. So you're going to have 5 cards in your hand, but one of them you're going to have chosen. That could be good in some decks. Roxanne is an absolutely nuts broken card you're going to be seeing a huge amount of. If your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards remaining, each player shuffles a hand into their deck. You get 6, they get 2. You can actually be ahead in the game. Roxanne is nuts and you're going to see loads of it. Spicy Seasoned Curry is not the best card out there. You burn your active Pokemon to heal 40 damage. But if you heal and then retreat, it's better than other options. And there are attacks we've seen that rely on how many special conditions are on your active. This is the way you can burn them. Super Effective Glasses turns weakness from ×2 to ×3. Especially for single prize Pokemon, it is going to be nuts. Sweet Honey, flip a coin till you get tails. And then you heal 40 damage from a Pokemon you chose before you started flipping for each heads. 40 damage, each heads. Could be huge, could be rubbish. I can see people playing this. Switch Cart is a switch that heals 30 damage. Well, yeah. It only works for basic Pokemon, but in basic Pokemon only decks, there is 0 reason to play Switch over this. And even outside of that, it's still got a lot of use. People are going to play it. Temple of Sinnoh turns all special energy into 1 colourless energy and nothing else. That is going to see a bunch of play. It already is over in Japan. Trekking Shoes, you look at the top card of your deck and you either put it into your hand or you discard it and draw a card. Really good for speed decks. Again, already seeing play in Japan. Wait and See Turbo, you can only use it if you go second and only turn 1. But search for a basic energy and attach it. Sure, it ends your turn and you're going second, so you could have attacked. There's a lot here, but I could still see this seeing some play in the right deck. And finally, Zissou draws until you have 1 more card in hand than your opponent. In a metagame where everyone's got large hand sizes, this becomes a really good draw supporter, although one that your opponent can play around. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen, that's the buy list. The whole thing's up on the screen, and I'm not absolutely guaranteeing that this is every card you will ever need. There are going to be a bunch of things that you want to go and get yourself, and that's absolutely fine. My goal here is nothing more than trying to make sure that you lovely ladies and gentlemen are prepared. And it really is as simple as that. This is basically my buy list. What I want to do is I want to make sure that I've got everything I need so that if I want to play a particular deck, all I need to do is make sure I've got the main attackers and then I can just go and play whatever I like. That's the way I'm making my buy list. So this is what I go and buy and this is what I put on the list. Absolutely, there are other things I've not put on the list which you might think are absolutely amazing and essential, but the wonderful news is, go for it. Get stuff that I didn't put on the list. Don't get stuff that I did put on the list. That's the beauty of a buy list. Use it as a nice little guide. But it need not be anything more than that, ladies and gentlemen. It never needs to be more than that. But now I want to hear from you guys. Which cards that I didn't put on this list do you think I should have? And which cards that I did put on this list do you think I shouldn't have? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.